the system of society, right? Society is a construct of us humans, right? We make it into a manufacturing system, a social system, right? A humanitarian system. We subdivide it into different parts, but in reality, society is just a system, a biological conglomerate of individual systems. And what do we say by individuals, right? We tend to call ourselves individuals, right? By the word, we mean that individuals, we are one, right? We are one. But in actuality, if we think systems thinkers think that each component interrelates with another one, we could say that these subsystems of this society, right, us humans, us that we call ourselves individuals, are really more intercorrelated than we think we are, right? And given that, there's this characteristic in systems thinking that when individual systems, or what we tend to call individual systems, it's just a constraint we put around an ecosystem that we call a system, and we call it an individual. But when individual systems are conglomerated and joined, they make a new system, right? We might say that the conglomerate of human beings creates a community, right? And the conglomerate of communities makes a society, right? But in all, we do have a society that tends to more and more feel like a system, right? But because of that, we tend to feel part of a just rolling chain. We're just a part of a mechanism that keeps growing and growing and really just dictating our whole lives. But in reality, we are all one. We are consciousness, our own one, fixed into a single, you may say, God, but consciousness as the center of everything. What we tend to call individuals and gives the spark of that characteristic in us humans is the notion of awareness. Different awarenesses of different things, right? You say, I'm aware of X object, but you're aware of X object and Y object, right? That tends to say that or mean that you have a different or more expansive awareness, right? So we have different awarenesses. And the difference between awarenesses is usually called perspective. Perspective gives us, as us, the viewers, the humans, the individual characteristic. But in reality, just by the notion that we all tend to have relationships, right? Social relationships or any of the kind means that we subtract information from others and then take into account into our mind, right? And subject our awareness to new information from new humans, right? Or other systems. Given by that, we have a flow of inputs that society, right? The larger society also keeps inputting into us, right? So in a systems thinker, we might say that we're just a subsystem of everything. And if you're a subsystem, you're part of the system, right? And to get all that, what is the system? What is society, right? Society, as we already defined, is the conglomerate of communities of human beings in one place, or just not even one place, but one sharing medium, right? And given that, what makes us have this aspect of society and be able to recognize that we tend to help a community out and say, he's a human just like me, right? The notion that he also has a different perspective or the same power of awareness, not the same magnitude of awareness, but the same capacity for awareness is what we tend to call consciousness, right? Consciousness lets us think. In other words, it's what lets me think right now about my own persona, my own awareness, right? But all that to say is that we all have a common consciousness as human beings. And by that, it gives child to awareness. Awareness gives, then derives or gives birth to perspective that then gives us the feeling of individuals. But if we were to strip awareness, right, out of the equation, what will we be? We would be humanity. We would be a central point in which our only consciousness is what exists, right? So everything derives from consciousness, right? And you may say, okay, I'm conscious of some things, but some other things I'm not that conscious of, right? We tend to have physical manifestations of the subconsciousness, such as habits. We just do it automatically, right? But the subconsciousness is just the hidden part of the consciousness. We can't evaluate. We are conscious of our consciousness, right? And our waking consciousness. But we tend not so much to be conscious of our subconscious, right? Our subconscious is just the hidden part, the part in which, if we're not disciplined, we do not have scope on it, or don't even realize sometimes it exists and just forget about it. But a way in which the subconsciousness takes form into a conscious perspective is in dreams, right? In dreams, emotions. When you feel emotions and you can attach a certain thought or even event to it, that is where subconsciousness may be able to be found, but it's always with us. But given that, we already defined that society has, in a way, a shared consciousness, right? That if we just strip it down to the awareness, right, and we just strip our awareness from the equation, then perspective makes it different, doesn't make us individuals. We then only have that consciousness is the only thing that really survives after the purge, right? And by that we become one, right? How do we strip awareness? I don't know the answer of that, but I do know that you can be in control of your awareness, right? If you were to be in control of your awareness in some form, you could be able to control how you feel, right? What you bring into life and what you believe, right? And here comes the question of, if we don't believe in something, does it exist, right? This is a very deep philosophical question that I have my own take on it, right? If you don't believe in something, it doesn't exist because you're not aware of it. If you're not aware of it, that means it doesn't have no effect. You might say there's events in the world that I'm not readily aware of, but it still affects me in some way. But if you don't have awareness, never, of that happening, you can attribute those same effects to other things, right? It's just a matter of abstracting a system or the ecosystem and expanding it, right? The more things you encumber, the more relationships you'll find, right? The more you abstract, the less and more definitive your answers, right? And going more into philosophy, right? If you have this perspective upon life and this systems thinker, it naturally gives possession into manifestation, right? It gives to the point in which if you don't find that a system, right, as you study a system yourself, your psyche, right, and you don't find or aren't aware of some things, right, that readily means that you're studying a subsystem, right, and finding the definitive answer for it, or the truth, right? It's not absolute, but nothing can be absolute. Everything is subjective, right? If you want to have a wider awareness, a wider perspective, you study more things, you check for more things, you check for more relationships. But that's when you want to understand, right? Most of the time when we want action, we want to do something, we need definitive decisions, definitive thoughts. Understanding takes time, right? So it's a pendulum that we need to have balance in between abstracting and expanding a system, right? To have a definitive, if our goal, right, is to take a decision, right? Or the goal is to better the system, right? Is that we need to abstract it to be able to understand it at some point, right? So if you're not aware of the full ecosystem, that doesn't mean you're wrong. That means you're right given the subsystem you're studying or are analyzing. And see how I call this everything not in a specific subject. I say system. A system can be anything, right? Anything that has a process in it, right? And given by that, you can attach this to the higher forms of yourself, right? Your mind, right? If you're not aware of things, that means that they don't take effect on you, right? But if you are aware of it, things, that means that they do take effect on you, given that you is the system that we're studying. So now having that defined, I want to now enter into the subsystem of perspective, right? Awareness, perspective, and eventually identity, right? We just talked about the brief oversights of consciousness, subconsciousness, and how the awareness takes a really big role in our daily lives, in our minds, right? But now I want to talk about identity, right? We tend to say that a person is unique, right? You might say synonym or similar to individual, right? And by that, we're saying that he has a different perspective of that perspective gives him a different type of personality or way of expressing himself, right? Outputting, if you will, if you are seeing it and studying with me, that he's a biological system, right? He is outputting a different form, a unique form. He's an individual because we cannot find similarities, or we might find few similarities with other people, right? But here we're not talking about if somebody's unique or not. Everybody's unique because every experience is subjective, right? I just want to define that there is no fixed state, right? Identity is not a fixed state, right? It's not that something that we just, tweak around and fix it, right? It's something that is always transmuting, right? It's something that is always deconstructed and constructed, right? If you're aware of it or not is your choice, right? But the power that lies in being aware that your identity is not a fixed thing that is needing to be fixed, right? But it is needing to be aligning with your goals, makes it a powerful tool of change, right? Change. You're able to change because you change perspectives. If you change perspective, that means that the scope of your awareness is changing also, right? So, given that, you find a technique, if you will, a method that people call manifesting, right? You manifest things into your life, and also revision. You revise things in your life. How do you manifest? Well, you manifest in this form. You take your awareness and fix it on some desire and make it aware that you already have it, right? You're already a systems thinker. How? Because you're thinking, right? You believe that your thinking informs the systems. So that means you're a systems thinker. Congratulations. It's that easy, right? Anything else, same process. Revision, right? Revision is taking the past. The present and the past and the future have no distinct divisions, right? They're unified, in which we say now is the present because I'm readily aware of it right now, right? Life, you might see it, or time is linear, right? When you experience it. But if we were to tap into our imagination, right? Our mind, time isn't a linear thing. It's non-existent. Time is the only thing that gives life to experiences and imagination. So if you're thinking, right, and you're remembering things, you're gonna have them, if you're undisciplined, right, you're gonna have them jumbled up, right, in a set. It's not organized nor anything. It's just a set, mathematical set, right? Nothing organized. Just that one thing cannot repeat, right? Everything is distinct. So, given that, revision is just taking these different elements of these sets of experiences and just making yourself aware of the things you want to be more aware and the things you want to remove from your past. It's that easy, right? And yes, I'm saying it's easy, but it's a journey, right? It is a journey that you should partake. There's a lot of techniques on how to do it, right? But that's the basic principle. But how we said, everything that seems simple is complex, right? So it might seem that at first your undisciplined mind isn't able to tap into your subconsciousness, right? And be able to revise and manifest as easily, right? Because you're now starting, right? You don't have much faith in it. But here, thinking with me, I want to plant that seed of at least doubt that this is true, right? Because I'm putting you into a situation to need to be able to confront everything as subjective. If everything's subjective, then by reason of doubt or by reason of analysis and just equivalence, it gives naturally birth to manifestation, right? And revision and all that. But that's more on a philosophical term. We're making it seem as if society is one, right? Which it is. It is one, right? If we take these assumptions into presence, if you will. But given different assumptions, you will have different results, right? If you assume a system is perfect in the initial stages while first studying, well, you're going to see it as if it were perfect, right? If you see a system as objective, right? There's some truths in the world that even by reason, they cannot become just a definite form of yes or no, right? So giving on what you assume is what you're going to construct in your mental point of view, right? And just by that, everything leads to the same conclusion that subjectivity sits at the heart of knowledge. And by that, you can take into account that everything is subjective, giving you the benefit of manifestation and revision. As well, you could do or use that power for your own suffering, right? People, when they get sad, they tend to get in this form of, I wouldn't say addiction, but habit, in which their subconscious mind is so in tune and aligned with this feeling, right? That they just keep manifesting sad things, right? And everything is just a change of mindset, a change of assumptions, right? And I'm just saying this now because I'm building you up to understand the law of assumptions, right? That naturally gives birth to everything that we've been talking about. But now going back to society, right? We already analyzed society in a systems way, macro way, in which we correlated consciousness with the human being, and that awareness makes us individuals. But in reality, consciousness unifies us all. See it as this. Consciousness unifies everything, awareness splits everything individually, right? Every human life. So given that, now taken into conclusions, you've now seen how you can take systems theory and be able to find reason, right? Given some assumptions, that's the base of everything. You need to have some primitive assumptions to be able to make conclusions, right? Because truth ain't absolute, it's subjective. So I've given you the rundown on how to analyze philosophical aspects. Take it as an example of a case study into society and awareness, consciousness and awareness. And you can apply the same principle to more micro topics like scientific topics and more philosophical in tune topics about specific situations. But now I was just giving you the base, right? So I now encourage you to take you as your new systems thinking brain also, to meditate upon your truths, right? And reason through it, because it's a benefit to really set and be aligned to your truths and then choose your goals and how you align with them. It's gonna make everything a whole lot easier and not like you're shooting in the dark while traversing life. Well, with that said, thanks for watching, and as always, see you later. And as always, thanks for watching. I've been, making these types of videos. I'm really trying to grow my channel a little bit by bit. I think I'll be doing more videos like this. I hope you enjoy such. If you want more content, please subscribe down to stay in tune. And if you would also like to share some thoughts, criticisms, or even ideas that sparked in your brain right now, you can just go to my Discord that I have it linked down. So with that said, thanks for watching.